Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Myths, Mysteries, and Majesty. And if you guys saw my announcement from a few days ago, tonight we're starting with a new subsection of the channel. Namely, we will start analyzing some other nerdy parts of our life and hobbies. And by that, I mean video gaming. Um, Two things I want to say about that quickly. First, I used to be a gamer. Now I play only here and there when time allows. But I was always upset whenever I would hear so-called adults, right? Especially coming if their judgmental attitudes towards gaming and video games, and especially if this would come from clergy, right? So leadership in churches would come and they'll be belittling or acting very harsh towards those who would play as something as childish. My heart would be there to stand on the side of those who play, because for some of them, that may be only source of excitement or any hobby. We don't know their condition when it comes to life, if they're depressed, if they need a friend, where do they live, if they're new in their area. We have no clue about each of those life circumstances. But the second thing is also that as much as I used to be a gamer, now, like I said, I only play here and there. My heart is also for non-believers who love playing games, because there's a lot of spiritual realities coming in video games. Video game lore, fantasy worlds are so wealthy with spiritual connotation, meaning that many times come from the Bible. And we as gamers, we as fans, and those who, as customers, enjoy these products, we have no clue sometimes how when we play, how can we relate this material with the Bible. So this has been on my soul, like a burden almost, to try to reach out to those people who are gaming, but they may feel as they're neglected or they don't know what to do, because video games are not just fun and a hobby. They're there also to teach us something. And video games, and I would just want to say this for all the ignorant people who would be putting this hobby down, video games have been making much more money than gaming industry. I mean, than movie industry, than music industry, than sports industry. This is recognized not just as a hobby, but also as art. With all those visual skills, with the music skills, with everything being implemented in games, this has been recognized long ago by society as a form of art. So it's not just a game and it's not just a hobby. And with that being said, I would just love to introduce Joshua and Paul, who were kind enough to find time for all of us tonight and to discuss tonight about currently a mega hit when it comes to action RPG game. Joshua, Paul, welcome. Can we start, please, with you, Joshua? What's new in your life?
New man, my son started karate, and I'm exceptionally proud of him. Um, I'm getting a lot accomplished at work, and I've accomplished almost all of the biggest projects that I have projected for this year, which is quite an accomplishment. First time in 4 years I've been able to pull that off, so feel pretty good about that. And I actually got one of the coolest compliments in the world I think any of us could have, and I know you would understand this, Nico, is being invited by the pastor of my own church to cover for the pulpit of my own church on a Sunday, but not just any Sunday, my birthday next month. So I'm doing pretty good, man.
Man, I'm so excited about you. Congrats. Once when you're done with that, please let us know how did it go. Paul, what
I'll
about
share a
you,
video
brother?
with you. I'll share the link.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Paul, what about you? I know you've been also very busy. What's the new season God has been putting you through currently?
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's been a wild summer. I moved here, so getting settled into some new digs and getting organized, and that was a bit of a journey in itself. I'll skip the details for now, but it's nice to kind of be getting settled in and getting ready and wrapping up another term of seminary, going through school here, and that was good and fruitful. God's leading me through some stuff there, and hopefully one more class, one more term, and then that'll be wrapped up for now. So I'm looking forward to getting some of my life back. And again, it's been fruitful, and God's been showing me a lot of stuff. But I'm also going to be grateful to be done that, and looking forward to a busy ministry season that starts here in September. We get everything back, and so a couple quiet weeks, and I'm glad to be able to join and discuss some stuff with you guys.
Man, that's awesome. For me, that it was enough to get bachelor's in theology. For you going masters, I salute you. That's amazing. So Godspeed with that. Okay, I need to give a quick intro before we start going through different players gameplay and start analyzing. So for tonight, we have prepared this game, Diablo. Diablo has been a very long franchise. It has currently 4 games in its series. The latest one, Diablo 4, I haven't played, but it's a mega hit. We've been watching some videos, reading about some background story, and I found so many Christian themes and terms used in the game, and I was like, well, what is the better game that is currently so popular than Diablo 4? So let us give just some intro for all of the viewers. Diablo 4, which just came out, places 50 years. It's placed 50 years after the events of the previous Diablo 3, which came out more than a decade ago. In Diablo 3, millions were slaughtered by the actions of the heavens and hell. As always, it's always creatures like us that get in the middle way, right? So in this slaughter, the daughter of Mephisto, the so-called Lilith, she's coming on the scene. Her grip on sanctuary cuts deep into the hearts of men and women alike, cultivating the worst of its citizens and leaving the world a dark and hopeless place. Now, when it comes to Lilith and her origin and character, she's the daughter of Mephisto, Lord of Hatred, and the sister of Lucian, known to all of Sanctuary as the Queen of the Succubi. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And now I'll read a portion of text from a very good article, which can be found on GameRant.com. And it's very important because it strikes so deeply into the theme of this channel. So please bear with me, I'll be quick. It says, to understand the full extent of Lilith's sinful quest in Diablo 4, one must start by understanding her motivation for the founding of Sanctuary. She met and fell in love with the angel Inarius in the distant past of the eternal conflict after discovering they shared the same wish to abandon the endless war. In an unprecedented move, the two formed a union and used the World Stone to create a new world, Sanctuary, free from the war, where like-minded angels and demons could seek refuge from the forces of the high heavens and the burning hells. Now, this is very interesting. The union of Lilith and Inarius would eventually lead to the two to bear offspring, as did their fellow angels and demons, establishing a new race of beings known as the. Now, this sounds very close to Nephilim, but they intentionally, I believe, rephrase it to sound like Nephilim. So I'll say Nephilim, but it's easy. I mean, I can say Nephilim. It's the same thing. As the power of the Nephilim grew, some among the angels and demons of Sanctuary wished to wipe out their creations, fearing they would be overpowered or draw the attention of the high heavens and the burning hells. This thought enraged Lilith, and she was driven to madness, seeking to kill any who sought harm to the Nephilim, leading Inarius to banish her from Sanctuary and use the World Stone to weaken the Nephilim. As their powers weakened, the Nephilim would eventually give birth to the human race as a much weaker mortal version of their ancestors. After her banishment from Sanctuary, Lilith no longer wished refuge from the eternal conflict, but to end it entirely, destroying both the high heavens and the burning hell in her quest. In order to accomplish this task, she needed to raise an army of loyal followers to the rituals. And the ritual performed by the Elias to bring Lilith back to Sanctuary gave her the perfect opportunity to enact her plan and to end the eternal conflict once and for all. So basically, Lilith is back now in the Sanctuary. She's plotting a new bloodshed, right? And she's portrayed, I don't know why, but she's portrayed as the daughter of Mephisto. So she's the main villain in the game. Now, We know this in the Bible that Lilith is mentioned, and we mentioned this several times throughout the channel, that Lilith is mentioned in Isaiah 34:14, and based on different translation, but also Bible commentaries, we see that she's portrayed as a night bird, a spirit or demon, or even as a screeching owl. Now, there's a legend which I think was used to create Lilith in the video game, at least partially. The legend says that Lilith was the first wife of Adam, and she abandoned him. And she abandoned not just Adam, but also the Garden of Eden. Then three angels tried to force her return. Of course, they didn't accomplish that. And according to some mythologies, her demonic offspring were sired by an archangel named Samael, and were not Adam's progeny. And what is very important when it comes to the lore and when it comes to the game, sanctuary is very often mentioned in the video game, but sanctuary is basically this mortal realm where everyone is located, where everyone lives. And for me, this is a perfect analogy, because throughout the game, we see these high heavens and we see these fires of hell, and then we see this middle earth, if I can put it that way, world where people are living all together with all these creatures. We will soon start with analyzing the first gameplay, but as the Bible is teaching us, we want to give credit to the credit is owned. Owned. So there are a few of the YouTube channels which we will be using to analyze their gaming videos. The first one belongs to the Full Game Therapy, and their link is used in the video description. And the second one, way shorter, is the YouTube channel called Break Time Gaming. Also, their video link is put in the description. Some of the descriptions about Lilith and the plot of the game was used from three video game websites. One is called villains.fandom.com, one is diablofandom.com, and the last one where I read from is gamerant.com. I know this is a long intro, but I didn't want to be in trouble with any authorities or with legal action. So I'm like, okay, first let me give the introduction when it comes to the game, and also let me mention all these channels. And now Joshua will start first with the introduction of the game, so we can, learn and see what's happening. And then after that, we'll just start analyzing and giving biblical perspective to the game. Thank you.
So if you want to pull up the, are you talking about sharing the second screen, right? There you go. Okay.
Sanctuary was never meant for humankind. It was forged as a refuge from the war between the high heavens and the burning hells. Instead, it became a new battleground in this eternal conflict. A secretive group called the Haradrim has kept mortals safe. But now this once powerful order is a husk of what it was, and Sanctuary's ancient creators have returned to claim the hearts of humankind. This is the story of their downfall. find better shelter before I freeze.
So do you want me to pause it at any point, or do you want to just keep going?
You can just put 1.5 speed. Okay, perfect. So let me start with this. So the reason why I chose the barbarian character, even though there are like several of the classes in the video games, for me, the favorite class of fighters in all these games would be usually the class of paladin or paladin, depending how you pronounce it, which would represent me the most. Not just, I mean, it would remind me the most to the biblical type of a knight would be, but also because I like swords and just weapons of that sort, and because there's no such a class in the game, I just opted to go with barbarian. So what we see here is that the owner of this YouTube channel chose this class as a barbarian, who is after the introductory video, he's now in this world, and he's starting with his quest. So first I want to say that I'm impressed with the audiovisual aspects of the game. I believe that this aspect of fantasy greatly contributes to the Christian imagination, and you guys can hop in and comment at any point whatever you think it's important for the game.
I was going to say the first thing that struck me was the really like that cinematic portion at the beginning. That sequence was really, really well made, and the music was especially well selected. Some of the sounds and the backgrounds and the whispers, and there's a lot of detail that went into that. It was very well crafted. It was surprising how detailed, especially how long standing this game is. Like, this game is not new. This is a very old franchise, and so it's very interesting to see how this is kind of a testament to the change of even just the graphics, like you said, the improvement of the art form of creating video games in general, the ability to use that as a form of storytelling, even to the point where it almost rivals a movie in some sense, because with a movie, you go and you sit there and you participate with your eyes and your ears and maybe your imagination. But in this, you actually get to participate in the storyline. And I think that's why video games draw us in the way that they do, is we want those kind of things. We want those stories. But this gives you a unique way to inhabit the story.
Yeah, for as long as I can remember, the series has been presented sort of as a living book. It had chapters and bits you play through with a lot of cinematics. But of course, over I think it's been around for about 25 years. It was the late 90s when the first game came out. Just that they were able to do so much more, and it's very smooth, and you can float in and out of it pretty well. The other thing that caught my attention too is sort of how this is sort of characteristic of the whole series, is that you're in a world that very much resembles Earth, but it's not Earth, and so they're playing with the boundaries of reality quite a bit. And I think it's striking that that they say sanctuary was not created for mankind. And of course, that's a very different belief from what we would see in the Bible, where God creates the whole world for mankind to inhabit, and it's not really complete until man is here. And I think as we see more and go on, I had some thoughts that what we see in the game and how they bring things across, that fundamental premise that mankind is sort of not the pinnacle of creation, creates a dynamic and some things that they do, that they play on, and has come back through the series, through the different installments.
Yeah, what I love RPG games. That's my favorite genre. One of the things I love in these games is how you have all these items in your inventory, and usually inventories are super detailed. And this is one of the things which remind me of the New Testament, where you pick up which boots, which belt, which armor, which weapon, which helmet to put. And this all reminds me of the spiritual warfare and how you're dressed. Also, this, as I'm just commenting as I'm watching all this leveling. Like we go from glory to glory, from strength to strength, from one level of maturity to another level of maturity. Video games are not just some time-killing, fun hobbies. They're also developing motorical skills with kids. They're also very good for depression. They're also good for so many things, including art and visual aspects that can contribute your life as a Christian if you know how to utilize all the beauties and all the goodies from video games in your daily life, including if you are a minister. So there are pastors and priests out there gaming, and I just want to say for all of you, it's perfectly fine. And yeah, I'm just with you guys. We see all this, parallels with the Bible. We see Lilith. We see this sanctuary, which supposedly it's not made for us, and this is where it differs with the Bible, because God created, well, not heavens, but He created the earth for us. So yeah, I would just say this is where we can notice some disagreements with the Bible, but overall, so far, everything except this little laggy part seems fine. Yeah, what are your guys' favorite classes when you play, if you used to play RPG games?
I would say my experience with something along an RPG game, especially on PC, as it were, as we're watching this, was back in the, let's say, late 90s. I was playing games that were more like Age of Empire or StarCraft, that were world building games, strategic games. They were less individual character oriented. But when I did play things like, let's say, like, what was that game? I'm trying to remember. I used to play one with a close friend who was actually a Mormon. But some of the time when I was playing, I would gravitate more toward characters that used like mages, that used weapons that were more oriented toward magic and enchantment and things like that. Those are usually the people that I was more gravitating to when playing those kind of games.
So did you repent of your wizardry?
Yes, no, I'm strictly into Gandalfism now.
And that sounds like a cool new cult / religion.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'll print out some business cards. That would be a fun one. I'm really impressed also with the way that you can tell that this is meant to be a huge world building exercise. Like this map is not turning out to be very small, and yet it's pretty extensive. But it's still really that simpler platform of like the upward view, and you're kind of checking the perimeter of the room and building your explored territory one section at a time. But it's really nifty though, because with games like this, once you've explored an area, you have it mapped, so to speak. You can kind of know how to get back to that area. And I think that's really cool also, because it's kind of representative of like the way you were drawing out the idea of going from glory to glory. You know what I mean? Like you also kind of learn how to encounter new ideas, let's say, and navigate space and certain things like that. And so these things are really engaging. They're like even on a subconscious level, there's a reason why these things are so engaging. I mean, they can be time consuming, granted, but so can anything else that you become really passionate about, and so it's difficult to say video games are uniquely bad for being time consuming, when I know that scholasticism itself can be time consuming, and so can essay writing, and so can musicality and musicianship, and let's say even things like the cinematics and any number of things that you become passionate about are going to be time consuming. So I don't necessarily see that as a negative in and of itself, only when it starts to interfere with other higher forms of responsibility, but for the most part, there's a whole lot of things that this does to reflect for you what it is that we're actually doing and thinking and trying to understand about normal things, task orientation and organizing items and thinking and planning ahead and strategizing. People used to have a way of looking at chess that was very similar to this, where you would say, not just a game, it teaches you life lessons, and I don't see that this is the same kind of thing as chess, but has a lot of the same kind of, practical benefits when you're learning a whole lot about, conservation and strategy and, and time management and, all kinds of things. It keeps your attention, and then it'll increase your reaction time. There's all loads of things that video games have done.
Yeah, it's being wise about your time and choosing what you invest in. But there are some very practical skills. I guess around the time I started university, World of Warcraft became a big deal. And rating, working with 40 people at a time and stuff. I know a couple people that actually were good enough at it that they were able to include it in their resume and get hired on it at some of the big tech companies, because there are some actual transferable skills, right? But it's kind of, what do you invest in, and also checking your underlying beliefs. If it's a game and you're just kind of unwinding a bit, that's all right. If this stuff kind of becomes your world, that's where I think it gets dangerous. It's interesting just looking at that last fight too, is that there's some things here where they're clearly referencing some spiritual ideas, but it's a very materialistic version of that, right?
Right.
And a lot of the stuff coming, carry over from tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and that sort of thing, where working with people and building teams and thinking about these things isn't a bad thing in itself, but it's kind of how do you want to go about handling it? Yeah. So that's going back to your question, Nico, too. Yeah, back to video games and stuff. I don't. You guys might remember, like, Command and Conquer was a big deal when I was younger. As a strategy game and that sort of thing. A lot of these games, I ended up playing sort of a hybrid role, because you're sort of straddling a physical fighting, but then there's spiritual concepts as well. So a little bit of sword and a little bit of magic, and find a way to get the job done.
Hey, that's that's cool. So one of the things I noticed so far, but of course I didn't want to interrupt, like in last 5 minutes or so. First, the dialogues in every video game are just like in real life, but also like in the Bible, like based on your conversation dialogue with every character, it depends what will happen after that. So it's very realistic. Like if you choose more kindness, if you have more charisma, favor most likely will come and follow you. So there is a better outcome for you, instead if you're a jerk or if you are mean towards people. Another thing I've noticed so far, I love the idea when you kill all these monsters and you take their loot, take the gold. It just reminds me of Abraham. I mean, Abraham went after his enemies, took the loot, and he was like, okay, God, for this time I give you all the 10 from all my loot. And I'm like, that's amazing. I don't know how that works in New Covenant. Probably not, but at least I enjoy this aspect. That I can a little bit relate with the Old Testament, and well, not just Diablo 4, in general, all these games. I would also like to say that man, this can reveal my age, so I won't be too specific. But about 20 to 25 years ago, I used to play Diablo 1 and 2. I finished both games long ago. I enjoy the games. They're one of those legendary games which, when came out, even if the sequel doesn't come out for the next 10 years, like, everyone knows about Diablo, right? And I remember when I was back home in Eastern Europe, I was again, I won't say what age, and I remember we had youth groups, and I remember our youth leader was saying, just because she heard the word Diablo of the game, she was like, no, don't play, that's diabolical game, it means the devil and all these things. But she wouldn't know that you're actually fighting the devil. You're actually, you want to kill him as the final boss. And what is I'll stop here for at least for this segment of the video. Is like a few minutes ago we saw the enemy standing above this pentagram sign, and the character come and the pentagram sign like appearing and disappearing again. And I would just like you guys to say something if you know about pentagram, because in my research about pentagram, I mean, we know now that it is primarily used in the occultic life. and rituals. But back in the days, it did not mean what it means today. That even actually the early Christians used to use this sign as pointing people to Christ, or as one of the symbols of Christianity, because the top angle would be Jesus's head, and this would be his arms, and then the lower two would be two legs. So for me, this just shows how over time symbols could be perverted by the enemy, by Satan, right? This is Diablo, so perfect analogy. Symbols can be perverted by the devil, by Diablo, to mean something evil. So maybe you guys want to continue on this.
Yeah, I mean the pentagram itself, which is ultimately just a line drawing of a star where all of its points intersect, right? That drawing with its 5 points on it actually is supposed to be a symbol of both man in general, which is incarnate, right? But also it was understood to be the 5 core wounds of Christ, right? But it also, is representative of a celestial image, which is why we call it a star. And so there's a lot that goes into it that really has nothing to do with the occult or evil, until you get the star and you flip it upside down, because that's what negative or occult or satanic symbolism ultimately is doing, is taking symbols that are normal symbols that have been used for a long time in many ways and flip them upside down or turn them the wrong direction, mirror them, or invert them vertically. And so you have something where you're getting what's the opposite of that symbol, right? So if you have a symbol that represents man, and you flip it upside down, it would represent the undoing of man, which is almost by definition a satanic symbol. So I think that's the reason why Satan would choose to use symbols like that, like even the one we just saw in that in the video just now. I can go back.
I'm sorry. I love how the priest is saying salvation is nothing new, but in light, because Lilith is approaching. Of course, this is not Christian church; it's just imaginary fantasy, church in a fantasy world. But still, this very well represents either a Catholic or Orthodox or maybe even Anglican church. And here's
Right.
the priest, and he's talking about sin. As I was listening to you, I'm reading the dialogue, and he's mentioning Father with a capital F, and I'm like, this is deeply religious video game. And then Lilith, as the main demonic deity in the game, shows up even in the house of the Lord and tries to pervert it, because you just spoke about perverted images and symbols.
Right. And you can even see what's in front of us on the screen right now, where you have ultimately, a monster standing in front of the cathedral light. And that window where the light is coming through is meant to represent like a window of heaven. Right. And instead, what's in front of it is a demonesque female spirit that has her arms out towards you, that has been revealed to us already as a succubi, right? And so what you have is similar to the symbolism of what you would get if you took the gargoyle on the outside of the cathedral and put it on the altar. That's what you get. The cathedral has officially been flipped upside down, because what's in the center is now darkness, and it's shrouded in light. This is exactly a biblical element. It's a spirit that masquerades as light.
It's interesting too how if this were to play out, like she's sort of trying to be welcoming and saying, "Hey, you're here already," but we find this grotesque and offensive, right? If they were to go along with this, there would be something inside of us that would resonate that this isn't right. We had the sense the whole series is actually playing on the internal order that we already kind of know about and have a sense of. Even if you don't want to name Jesus or point directly to him, there's that internal sense that there's a way that this is supposed to go, right? And they're inverting, subverting, twisting that to get their story or their setup.
Yeah, and there's something also to be said about the way that, like Nico just said, is they're making obvious reference they're making obvious reference to, let's say, like a more formalized liturgical model of a cathedral or a church to illustrate for you that this is supposed to be a sacred space. Like, it makes obvious that this is the imagery that they're using. It's supposed to represent a sacred space, and yet it's meant to be an inverted, shocking experience to see a demonic entity materialize in a sacred space. And of all the places, it makes sense. They didn't have her materialize in the bathroom. They didn't have her materialize in the baptismal. They had her materialize in front of the window that reveals the transcendent light, this incoming light. That's supposed to be revelation. You know what I mean? So it's like those kind of things. None of that is accidental. That was all of these images are chosen in like instrumentally to show you, you know, the role of what's in front of you. You know, the same way the same way that they would be so selective and intentional about what kind of music or sound effects are present in these different cinematic scenes. It's very, very intentional.
And that's happened earlier in the series before. You know, I think I'm trying to remember all of them, but they use names like Baal and Diablo and Mephisto, and you encounter them both in sort of dark and cavernous areas and in sort of pseudo, you know, Catholic, you know, like monasteries or cathedrals and that sort of thing, but where it's been corrupted, and that they're playing on those ideas. As it comes back, I guess Lilith here is supposed to be sort of one step down, but clearly she's still pretty powerful, and the relationship between her and humanity is not a regular thing. They're not, you know, the priest isn't expecting her to be right there.
Right. Do you want me to keep playing, Nico?
Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Meant to be. Break the chains and be beautiful in sin.
Resist! Resist her temptation! Vani, it's me. I brought your child into this world.
And there you go.
They're also playing off a lot of traditional imagery, like a lot of the medieval stuff here too.
They have awakened, Mother.
The first of many. Go to the dry steps and continue your preparations.
And so you can see almost it's actually the graphic nature of this is actually a really remarkable display of what it looks like when you can make as overt as possible what it looks like when you participate in a corrupt spirit. You know, like it shows up, it entices, and everyone there was so weak as to immediately succumb to it and immediately participate in its will. You know, and people would go and say, oh, well, you know, demons don't exist, spirits don't exist. You know, we've seen people operate under the spirit of anger and rage and war for millennia. It's no wonder the ancients saw them as gods. You know, they seem to possess people. They're around long after that person that was possessed is dead. They come back and possess other people, you know, and so something like this is really, you know, while it's graphic, it's actually giving, let's say, almost a cautionary tale kind of visual to what it looks like when you placate the evil in your own heart. You know, James chapter 2 style, where the sin arises in your own heart and gives birth to death.
Yeah, interesting too that priest is sort of the hurdle in the way, and that's the first thing that's taken out, so that the plan can progress. That's a good reason to pray for your pastors, because they are mediators and defenders of the sheep, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's incredible, and what's frightening too is that, you know, how often. Oops, sorry about that. Somebody going by on a motorcycle. How often you have, you know, congregations in which, you know, the pastor is doing the best that he can with what he has, and people, instead of aiming to build him up, are often just nitpicking him to death. You know, and it's not easy to be a pastor, and often in a spiritual sense you can feel this kind of attack. happening in an emotional sense, not a physical sense. It's not like they're coming up and literally stabbing you in the back, but that gossip is an ugly monster. There's a reason why the scripture equates it with witchcraft.
It is a demon, Lilith. The gospel says that she will walk among the people.
Yeah, a lot of people nitpick, but
if she is here, it is humankind's own sin.
You can go ahead. I'll wait. Don't worry.
I would say a lot of people nitpick, but like, do you really want to be the leader and wear that mantle? And that comes up in a lot of areas of life, whether you want to talk about the responsibility given to men or fathers or pastors or whatever it is. And I think some of these games in our society critiques a lot of those things, but you don't stop to think what that really means, and the order that God has left us with to have a good functioning society and to be safe and not succumb to some of these other things.
Yeah, I just want to say that when it comes to the RPG games and fantasy roleplay games, I love the most when camera is behind your back, so you can see the whole character, not just like now in the bird's eye view, but actually in the third person view behind your back. And I tend to visualize a lot. I don't just play a game. I haven't been playing and gaming much in the last several years because of things in life that come. But if I would play a game like this, I don't want to just do the mission and just leave. I see the wind, see the blizzard, see the fire, see when people are talking how the tavern looks like, and if they're cooking some special stew, if they're like tambourines or something, violin playing in the back, like these things make me so. I enjoy these things. My audio visual senses are purely enjoying, because I envision I'm there. I'm part of the game. It's not just a game. I'm there. Like I want to almost teleport myself. Like beam me up, Scotty. Like I want to be in the game. I want to, I want to be part of this world and of this quest, because ultimately this is what Christian fight against these powers and principalities is about. And also, I was reminded earlier when you guys said how gamers shouldn't be scolded for playing games as supposedly waste of time. I have a buddy at work who tells me that sometimes he goes playing golf. I never went to play golf, but if they play 18-hole game, I think that's how it's called, and there are like a few of them or several of them playing, he told me that they can end up being the whole day on the golf yard. I don't know how they call it, the whole golf stadium outside, playing from morning until late at night. Now, I'm not saying this is bad or sinful in any shape or form, but how is that, or anything that we like, any hobby, any anything else that we like, how is that less being spent in time wasting than games? And surely someone can say, well, this is golfing, basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever, ping pong. I love ping pong. How can this, this is good because it's beneficial for your body? And I would agree wholeheartedly, but this is not one of the aspects which I need necessarily for my Christian walk. So, don't put these things highly, on the throne in your life, but then put something like this down just because it's supposedly quote unquote waste of time. Because anything, if we want to be super literal and strict with the Bible, anything where you're not spending time evangelizing, praying, or singing could be seen as the waste of time. And I don't think God is against hobbies, but like you guys said, everything in its own context, in its own time, with a certain measure, and just to know the limits and boundaries. But so far, the things I'm watching, even this monument to the fallen warrior, or maybe an angelic being, everything for me is so beautiful. It's almost like I want to be there with this character, with this hero. Like you're in this quest, you're fighting the evil, you're enjoying the conversation with random people, you're having side quests where you go and save people, and not necessarily because you can get more money, but then in all these adventures you find these hidden treasures which you may not find elsewhere. Like, oh, this sword, for example, that you find in a chest belonged to this king so and so. Now it's yours. It's anointed. It can cut deeper. It's it's sharper. All these things are so amazing. This is why I love fantasy novels, fantasy games, fantasy movies, because they're not just fantasy. They have, again, so much spiritual reality that we can apply in our spiritual warfare and daily walk with the Lord, honestly. And again, I'm just, currently, the character is building his own imaginary. I mean, the guy who plays the game is building his own guy. And you can see all the talismans, the amulets, this horn-shaped helmet. I mean, everything is so amazing and done in details, and nothing is coincidental. And this is not just in Diablo, right? In all the type of game, in all the games of this type and genre, we see all these different entities, creatures. Now we see the giant spiders, just like in the Hobbit. We see all these things which are somehow connected, and we can put in the big picture, because we only see glimpses and pieces here and there. But for me, it's phenomenal, because it doesn't just activate my imaginary aspect, but it can also encourage me, like I said, in my spiritual walk with God, and think about these dark entities and stuff. Surely, I mean, we may not walk outside and see zombies or giant spiders, but in the unseen realm, to use the word of Dr. Heiser, there are entities invisible to us like that, and they cause a real danger. So I don't know if you guys want to say anything about that.
I really like the added aspect of the use of different, like you pointed out, there are amulets, there are particular types of agility or strength or healing kind of potions or enchantments and things like that. There are things that you can gather from the world and add to your person to make you more powerful and formidable against the world. But in some sense, it also, you have to, if you're only doing that and you're not adding to your level of skill or ability to actually use those things wisely and encounter the enemy and overcome the enemy, you're not facing the same enemy over and over. These enemies are going to continue to increase as you do, right? Which is another thing that is really engaging for us, even on a subconscious level, is recognizing that as you increase your stock, you increase your skill, you increase your utility, and then you get to increase also the things that you encounter. And so it's kind of like, even again, a transferable skill. You think about in real life, you're going to, try for bigger and harder things because you can make more money, but you have to undergo more responsibility and the risks are higher. And so you're always going to encounter things at these kind of fractalized levels as you expand yourself out and you make yourself more powerful. You're doing these things in real life. You want to go to a job interview, and though there's no enchantment or spell or anything that's maybe going to get you the job, you are going to dress the part. Let's say you show up in a suit and a tie. This is similar to a talisman. You don't think there's actually some power that's exuding from you that's going to do, but you do, because you show up in this thing and you expect it to affect the room. You expect it to affect the person who's doing the interview with you, and that it's going to make an impression on them even before you open your mouth, that something about you is going to shine forth. And so we do things like this, and that's why it maps on and makes so much sense to us to use these things in these kind of stories, is because even in real life, we're doing things that are very similar to this. We just have a materialistic way of looking at it, and we stop thinking, in a way that was, let's say, rather enchanted. And so the reason why you can love this kind of story and you can be immersed and fall in love with the just the setting and everything else is because you kind of, like, especially as men, we want that, like, difficult thing to do. You want to kill a monster. You want to, you know what I mean? You want to save the maiden. You want to get the gold from the cave, from the dragon. You want to do that, and then you can come back. You can be the hero. You gain the prestige, but also the skill, the strength, and then you get this importance, and people rely on you. And it's like, yeah, we do that in everyday things, but this is kind of like a condensed, big feeling, and so we want this huge achievement, and so we try to face bigger and bigger monsters over time. This is what you should be doing. So another thing that you can garnish or kind of glean from from this style of storytelling is that it really, like, knowing that you're going to face dragons, you should at least recognize that you're the kind of person that could go out and face them. You know, like, you want to think of yourself as capable of being the hero, capable of facing adversity. There's no way to learn in endurance unless there's anything to endure, you know? So it's like video games give you a platform where you can almost, in a, let's say, cost-free way, play out different ways of being, the same way that our imaginations allow us to make like little avatars of ourselves. And then we let them play out. And then you don't act out the ones that ruin things, you know? And it's like that. There's a reason why we do these things with story. There's a reason why you want to inhabit that place. It's supposed to be like that. It gives you a glimpse into the future, you know? It gives you a glimpse into yourself.
Man, I just want to say quickly, 5 seconds. Currently, I'm watching this and I'm enjoying so much, as if I'm almost there, with all this simple furniture, simple food. There's like a fireplace behind you. It's peaceful, but yet it's blizzard outside. You can hear the sound of wind that is carrying, snow, maybe even through this cottage, through the shack. There is a new person involved here. He's a mountain hermit, so I see him as a spiritual warrior. Yes, he's a hermit. He's a desert man, but he's also a warrior. So he's like almost like a prophet, or some man of God that lives in a desolated area, but don't take him for granted. Don't think he's some weakling. He's actually, a strong man, and he knows how to fight and how to survive. So I'm just enjoying everything from the spiritual perspective to the beauty of graphics. Just, I can't help it. Just imagine I'm in Frodo's or Bilbo's house, or I'm in that tavern. I just can't help it. I'm just enjoying. But Paul, it's your turn. Sorry.
No, that's good, man. I guess I had another thought by going here is, yeah, you get this journey and then you get the story, and now you find allies on your quest and find people to work with and continue the fight. I think that's a good Christian message, that we're not in this alone. We got people to help us out, and maybe we're not smacking down some goblins or demons or whatever these are quite the same way, but it's good to have a partner on your journey and to work together. I was going to go back and say I'm a terrible golfer, so that's not a great comparison for me. And maybe sports. I do appreciate sports and that sort of thing. But I think for people that don't understand the medium or don't see the value of it, it's a little bit closer to maybe spending an afternoon reading a book or working on a puzzle, where maybe you are a little bit more stationary, but you're working through something that way. And we've got different things we like or we process. I remember reading through The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and then the movies came out a couple years afterwards, and I hated them because it wasn't the same world. I'm trying to piece these together, and the way it is in the movies isn't the way it is in my head, and how you perceive that stuff and put it together, and the details you pick out. So it's not for everybody, and there's gonna be stuff you like and you don't like, and if you find it useful, then spend some time on it. But again, I kind of preach balance. I know there's sometimes where I binge and that can become unhealthy, but if you enjoy it, then find some use out of it.
Yeah, I'm really tripping on the detail too, man. Like the way the ice on the ground shimmers and everything. Like it's very well crafted. You can tell that like it really is like a testament to the amount of increase in technology and capability that's happened since this game first came out till now. And then they have a fourth installation. It's like, man, this is so different. I remember playing games like Doom. You're going through these square rooms with square characters with square droplets of blood. Like everything is just, it was so different. And even back then it felt a lot more real than it looked, during the gameplay process. And so the increase in just the overall, like we're rather spoiled, aren't we? Man, this is amazing.
Hey, Josh, just a quick interruption. A couple of years ago, I was watching gameplay of one of the latest Doom editions, right? Which is with modern graphics and soundtrack, and it looks much better, has modern weapons and all whatnot. And then I was reading comments, and one guy, of course I don't know him because this is YouTube, and one guy said, hey, Doom is the most Christian-like game. And then like everyone is following, how come Doom is the most Christian-like game? Like, how is Doom related with Christianity? And then he says, well, because you kill millions of demons throughout the game. No other game has so much demons. And I was like laughing, but I'm like, well, in a way, this dude is right. Like in all these games, there's this, hey, I mean, the authors, the designers can be as much as they want to be agnostic or atheist, right? That's their choice, right? But you cannot remove religious connotation and theme from all these games. You simply cannot. It's deeply embodied in all of us, and that's just being portrayed in our works, including fiction, because art in any shape or form, including video games, is just representing the imagery we have in our hearts, in our minds, and what comes from our heart, right? What comes from our heart is this is what we portray. So all this religious and spiritual background and details, I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but you have to respect and you have to appreciate these things, because without the religious aspects, what will be what will be the theme in the game? What will be I don't even know what would be like fighting Marxism. What will be like your quest in the game? Like, if you want to feed the poor, boom, Christians did it. You want to, defeat the dragons and evil, boom, Christians did it. You want to look for the swords of the spirit, booms. It's Christian theme. Like, what else do you want to do? Everything is spiritual, and I don't mean just Christian, right? Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but we can also say Jewish, right? It's biblical perspective, and this is what gives so much excitement and beauty. And of course, things like Paul said, goblins are not in the Bible, but still they contribute to the lore and to the overall excitement and experience with the game. And like, for example, Tolkien, when Tolkien was creating his work, he used a lot of Christian allegory and themes and details, but he also used some of the Nordic mythology, and that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be either or. You can combine and get as many inspirations you can out there and still use them to tell a story and to glorify God. Like Joshua said maybe 20-30 minutes ago, he liked how the character finds items in the game. They're just coming from the world, right? But we don't want to be like Gnostics, right? Everything that is materialistic is evil, right? Everything is unclean. No, God created these things and he said they are good. So it's up to us if we find a stick of wood or like a stone, how we will use it. We will be like Cain and Abel, we will kill someone, or we will build someone. So, I mean, there are tons of layers in every game. Wherever you have fantasy elements, there are tons of layers about spiritual and religious elements. And if you want to write essays, if you want to teach and preach, you can use so much when it comes to illustration from fantasy worlds, either in novels or from movies or video games. And it's just, for me, this is it's amazing. Again, let's remind everyone that video games are not just waste of time or a hobby. It's also a form of art. Officially, this is not me inventing things. It's officially an art. It's been art for a long time. Actually, people who design video games, they get something like Oscars get for their in the movie industry. So they get also their credits and their if I can say, trophies and medals, right? So this is not to be something to be ashamed of, but to use in certain dosage. You just know where it belongs. It shouldn't be an idol, but it's perfectly fine to play and draw this spiritual imagery and lessons from from these games. So again, I didn't play Diablo 4, but I did play and finish Diablo 1 and 2 back in the days, 20 years ago. I enjoyed them. Recently, Blizzard put the enhanced version of Diablo, was it 1 or 2? I think Diablo 2. They say it looks amazing. It's, for some people, it's actually better than Diablo 3 and 4 because it's so much more fun. I don't know. I don't remember every detail. But for me, so far, Diablo 4 looks amazing. And I would just encourage everyone, hey, if you want to enjoy these games, support all the original content creator, and we have put their links in the description from 2 guys and their video channels. Subscribe to these channels, and if you like the game, buy the games. Support the developers. So, guys, I don't know what is next on your mind that you would like to say regarding this part of the game.
Just really that it's impressive, like it's not a simple thing to make anything really, especially like you're trying to craft something from nothing, not exactly, because we all have our influences and we're working with what we have, but in some sense building a world like the one that this story is inhabiting here, and then not writing into a book, not making it into a cartoon, but making it into a kind of cartoon that you the viewer gets to participate in, which is really it's a trip to think about what it exactly is that we're doing when we're playing a video game. But yeah, it's very impressive, this whole thing, and really thinking about how long this franchise has been out and what it was like to play the first couple ones, and then to see this whole thing develop. It's something.
Yeah, I'm kind of noticing how they're playing with light and dark here, and you kind of get into town and civilization, and it doesn't seem like it's completely run over with yeah, creatures and stuff, but it's lighter. You're here during the day, and as opposed to the real dark moments, and they're I think they're using that to help tell the story as they're going as well. I also was thinking that the hierarchies built into this, and from the skill tree to even just the idea of having a game where you're like attacking creatures and demons and stuff like this. Like obviously we've got even from a biblical standpoint, we have dominion over animals, and we kind of animal husbandry and farming and forestry and all that kind of stuff. But this is sort of a different level of stuff. If you're not approaching this from at least some sort of a Judeo-Christian viewpoint, that should actually be completely terrifying. That you can like attack a demon in a game and not like experience consequences, right? Like there's other worldviews out there where that would be nonsense, or even imagine an ancient person seeing this kind of thing, and obviously the technology would be wondrous to them, but like just understanding like what you've done and really how the world has been transformed through the work of Christ, that we can think that this sort of thing is even fun and not like completely changing our world or like condemning us as we do it. Like Josh, you said a minute ago, like even thinking video games are approaching this sort of thing, we don't do it because it's so natural to us because of the world we live in to a point, right? But to certain other people through history, this would have been nonsense or terrifying, just in the very nature of it.
Yeah, it would have, that's for sure. I'm also interested really in the storyline developing around, the idea of the greater evils, the lesser evils, and like you said, that hierarchy of not only just the heavens and the burning hells, and then this realm in between. Like I think it's kind of nifty to have games and books and novels and things like that help to illustrate to people, even in a secular sense, that we do live sandwiched kind of uncomfortably in between two realms, but it's not that and I think that the main aesthetic that people kind of get wrong here is this idea of yin yang equality, right, rather than genuine hierarchy, right? Because most of these stories have these illustrations or these elements in which, the light, the upper portions, the heavens are rarely involved, and it's mostly darkness doing everything, and I think that that's why stories like this kind of give you a landscape that, like, let's say in the modern world, we can almost identify with more readily. We feel that the world is a dark place, You know, we're kind of aware of the darkness around us, and because of the way that the news and you know, media and things like that have revolutionized the world, we're kind of more aware in a global sense of the human darkness, let's say. It's not like we needed to be told that necessarily, but it's a lot harder to pretend like humanity is just kind of good, and then, you know, bad leaders show up and make us do bad things. Like, you know, you know what I mean? Like the world is kind of a dark place, even in its smallest corners, when the people who are in leadership aren't looking at all. Even those people find darkness in those places. And so it's like, if you feel like the world is that kind of place, and you feel the need to confront it, you know, an outlet like this and a game like this kind of would fall right up your alley, you know. But in the same way, it's like I can map that same aesthetic onto something like, you know, like Christian guys who start a metal band, right? And they want to go out and they want to play, let's say, in secular venues, even alongside secular bands, but deliver something of their gospel message in an overtly dark place. Let me just go right into Satan's cathedral and play my Jesus music in his language, by the way, right? Like you're using Satan's playing field against him in some real sense, which is, in a real way, the Bible uses a double kind of flipping of things, this, you know, rightful place, because we talked about symbolism before, how you have a symbol and then satanic or demonic influence will flip the thing on its head and invert its meaning, right? So if you have a symbol of man and you flip it on its head, it's the undoing of man, right? Well, what would happen if somebody in the world where that symbol is upside down and man is being undone came along and flipped the symbol? They would put it right side up again, right? And so there's kind of this push to be aware that the world is a place of darkness, but you have something to do. You have something to do, and when you show up, you're not going to be favored necessarily for doing that until the good has come. Confronting darkness doesn't really feel good often, you know. So it kind of, you get that depth to the rawness of, you know, this expression of like a dark space, a dark aesthetic, this kind of macabre background, you know. But then you have in it also like this kind of, you know, nascent virtue of trying to move upward, to go against the darkness, you know, to be a light in a dark place, so to speak. And so I think there's a lot of good that can be had just out of the idea of looking at the way that this is being portrayed visually and aesthetically, that it is a dark, gritty kind of thing, you know.
Cold, isn't it? But at least we are safe.
Yeah, one of the things that I love in RPG games is that if you guys notice, when the character, you know, defeats certain enemies and opens certain, you know, treasure chests, he finds these wonderful new items, and the regular weaponry is usually in a gray color, so it's nothing special. It's like, you know, what you can find anywhere. More special items are usually with blue color in most of these fantasy role play games, but those unique or legendary items, they're like yellow or like golden color. So I remember when I would play games like this, I'm such a nerd for these little things, for these little details, that, you know, you're like, oh, like you would try to remember even the name of a certain item, or this, let's say this is kings or knights ABC's boots, or like sword, or like a crossbow. So sometimes you will be assigned to find a whole armor of a certain knight or a certain clergy or whatever, because it's anointed, it's special. So once, when you find it, you're so much stronger, and you're wearing this anointed weaponry and armor. And this is another biblical parallel that I find to be perfect. And like I said, sometimes I'll pay attention to even these little details, like, oh, let me try to remember the name of this you know, special cool sword or warhammer or axe I found, because, you know, it's like way stronger than anything I found before. It's not a common thing. You cannot just go and find it anywhere. You had to go through pain, sweat, tears, blood. Maybe you nearly died, And in games like this, you die often, and finally you can load it, right? But sometimes you lose points, or you lose a certain weaponry or gold or whatever. But you're so happy when you find a certain item, because that item is worth more than money. You cannot just go and buy it. Also, another important aspect of games like this is, I mentioned earlier, dialogues. Then, of course, we have fight, but it's also this skill of learning how to trade. Again, in games like this, you usually have charisma, learning how to talk, which will contribute. Like in real life, if you're kinder to people, you'll get better deals. You'll go better in life. People will be more able to help you. Opposed to if you're acting like a jerk, you like bossing people around. If you're acting like you're better than them, you won't accomplish anything. You won't have real friends, right? Even if people obey you, maybe because you're above them, they may fear you, but that's not the type of fear, the type of relationship you want to have. Even at work, you want to, if you're a leader, you should be leading them by the example in kindness and love, right? So this hero, I'm not talking about particular hero in Diablo 4, but this hero in all fantasy roleplay games and RPG games, he's not just called to be a skilled warrior, but he's called to be much more noble than that. That's why I love the class of paladin. So this is barbarian. So he's brute, it's savage, like pure muscles, but with knights, like paladins, like they have less muscles, but they have more charisma. They have more of that spiritual nature. Like, yes, they go, but they don't do just things for money and for the glory. They go also, for the greater good. And I know this may sound funny to some, but a few weeks ago when I had on the channel Dr. Louis Marcus, I have a couple of his books here. He's writing about connecting ancient pagan classics and authors with Christianity, and he sees correlations. So sometimes he said this when we had live session. He said sometimes instead of, when I want to do devotionals, I don't read a devotional Christian book. I go and read classics, Greek classics, pagan classics as devotional, because you can learn a lot. And he was laughing when he was telling this. And to some people who are so strict, whose religion, I'm talking about Christian religion, whose religion doesn't allow them a millimeter to go left or right. Everything is so black and white. Everything is so legalistic. Everything is so moralistic. They don't know so much how to enjoy in life. And I'm not talking about sinful side of life. They just don't know how to have fun. Everything is like A, B, C, D, E. Anything you go above that is a sin, is evil. So I remember when Dr. Marcus said, when we had the live session, he said, "Oh, I read Greek pagan classics as devotionals." I'm like, well, maybe you can play a game like this or watch Lord of the Rings or any of those movies. I love, for example, The 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas is one of my favorite movies. Like Antonio Banderas' character is a Muslim, but so what? He's a religious guy, and it goes even beyond him being religious in the movie. It's such a wonderful plot. It's such a wonderful story of how he, as an alien, as a foreigner, integrates with Vikings and go and fights these things that they thought they were like demonic entities, but they just happen to be savage people. And I'm just saying how you can do so much things from the fantasy world and even use them as devotionals. I mean, yes, you cannot quote them as you can quote Bible. You may not be able to go and talk about just anyone what you're doing, but these things are not opposing your faith. I hope someone hears when I'm saying this. These things can complement your faith. These things can complement your walk with God. These things can, for example, video game, these things can help you visualize how the spiritual warfare looks like. These things can help you understand, okay, we live primarily in the materialistic world, but there's this unseen realm which we go through and we face it even though we don't see it. But we interfere with angelic and demonic forces all the time. The Bible says we do it. To some we have shown hospitality, we don't even know about these things. So I mean, there's a lot of beauty and a lot of helpful small details, spiritual details, not just in Diablo, but in all of these games. And again, it's if I would be back to be a gamer like I was when I was younger, I would not feel condemned or guilty at all. My problem would be when to stop and to have time for something more important. But when it comes to merely playing, or you feel like you're immature, or you I don't know, you're not doing something opposed to video games, there's no guilt or condemnation for that. That just comes from people who don't like these things. They don't understand these things. Their visual side and imaginary side is not very developed. They're more maybe something that is that they can see and touch. Like we mentioned, golf. It can be basketball, it can be tennis, it can be walking the dog. And again, these are all wonderful things. But these things do not oppose your faith, and it doesn't have to be either or, a false dichotomy, right? We can have all these things and enjoy in all of them, and none of them is sinful. None of them is sinful. Because I remember back in the days, people think that just because you read Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter and there is, like witchcraft or magic. I mean, the same thing, you have in these video games. Once when your life energy goes down, you use a potion to heal yourself. There's no way that means you're doing something sinful, because you're not practicing magic in your real life. It's just a game. It's just a game. And even if you get healed, maybe there's some spiritual lesson and message behind it, and not necessarily something, it's a witchcraft, it's a cult, how can you play those games? So again, especially when it comes to Romans 8:1, I would feel as a person of faith, still very full with flaws and very fallible. I'll feel zero condemnation if I'll be back playing games. Or maybe, let's say, I quit my daily job, I create just a gaming channel, and I start making money. If my job would be playing games all day, I would still not feel bad or condemned or judged. Again, based on Romans, not just Romans 8:1, but in general, according to the Bible. So I would just encourage you. You can be a believer or non-believer. Maybe finding this channel randomly, or maybe a friend refer you to it. If you're a Christian, don't feel bad or guilty playing games. But even if you're not a non-believer, just know that the games and the entities and the tasks and all the spiritual reality that you're facing in games, it's more than fantasy. It's more real than you may be thinking or even dreaming about. I'm reminding, and I'm done with this segment just by saying this, I'm reminded of what Mark Twain said, that he said that something like fiction. No, he said something like fiction is more realistic than I can't remember, something like this fictional stuff are more realistic than real life. And I'm always reminded of that, because I don't think he was a man of God, but sometimes you can hear the biggest wisdoms and wise sayings even from non-Christian authors. So again, don't feel bad if you love gaming. That's just the way you are, and maybe part of the character God made you to be. Just have some boundaries and learn how to use your skills and gifts and passions to learn more about spiritual reality and to teach others and to glorify God. Just like with everything else in life, you can be a car mechanic, a doctor, or you can be designing or playing games, in order to make money or to spend some time. So, I would just say drop all the guilt and just enjoy what you like to do, as long as not continuing in some sort of sin.
Did you want me to hop to that other clip or?
Let me see how long. I would say we can still go for like 20, 30 minutes with this one.
Okay.
Yeah, Nico, I think the quote you're thinking of, there's a couple of versions of it. I think Lord Byron said it and Mark Twain said a different version of it, but that truth is stranger than fiction, right?
Yeah, I just Google it. Yeah, that's
yeah.
what he said.
And part of the idea behind that is that fiction actually has to, in some way, make sense to us, or it's confined to the way we see things structured. Which is a good point in these games. It's kind of like you can see the guy leveling up here and there, and he's going through the skill trees and trying to figure it out. Like, can you imagine that, like at level 2, you get the most powerful ability or weapon in the game, and then it's all kind of downhill from there, like that, in a way that doesn't make any sense to us. The idea of leveling up and growing and facing bigger challenges and working to completion are all kind of natural ideas for us that we kind of grapple with or work with that show up in games all the time. So
I would just like to say, for anyone who has any questions, anyone from the audience, any question regarding art, video games, Christianity, religion, Bible, you may agree or disagree with us. That's perfectly fine. But any question or suggestion you have, or even the future video game you would like us to analyze, for sure, I want to go with The Witcher 3. It's one of my favorite games ever. Even though I finished it several years ago, I still love it. Drop any suggestion, any question in the live chat. Feel free to interact with us. But yeah, back to you guys.
I'm really kind of entranced by the way that this every time you go to a different realm, you have a different setting, you have a different season, or like the monsters are all appropriate to the different areas that you're in. Like there's like forest monsters and like snow monsters, and when you go into the caves, there's giant spiders or whatever kind of thing. They're kind of there, it's just a very clever form of diversity where you're not facing the same thing over and over, like older forms of games where they kind of had this copy paste of every single villain. There was classes of villains, but they all really looked exactly the same, but in games like this, the way they've developed them, you really get like a wider variety, not only of the kind of monsters that you're facing, but also the kind of moves or whatever thing that they're capable of. Their different weapons and stuff are different, and maybe the weapons that you use to face them might be different. And so it's kind of a added level of difficulty and detail that's actually really cool.
yeah, and coherence and good design. Like, could you imagine walking out in this kind of tundra area and there's like a zombie giraffe or something like that? It wouldn't make any sense. I mean, you can make that an enemy and it fulfills the function of the game, but for good storytelling and coherence, that's important. But sometimes you stick that in as sort of a twist because it's supposed to be absurd. I don't think this is a spoiler because it's been around for like 20 years, right? But I remember in one of the original Diablo games, there's a level that's just all cows, and it's full, and they have different kinds and stuff, but it's supposed to be this kind of absurd thing that's fun and actually gets told as a story in itself because it doesn't fit the normal sort of thing you would expect.
I need more fury.
And I'm curious, is he back in an area he was before or something? I'm just watching this transition to a dark area too, so there's something that has to be going on in the story to reflect that.
Yeah, I think there's a transition between day and night happening, maybe.
Yeah, he teleported. I mean, we see snow again, but if it's completely the same map where he used to be, I'm not sure. I know that I was watching different videos from different YouTube channels, so I can find something adequate for us. And I mean, this is not the whole game because developers will keep getting extensions and DLC content more and more because this game just came out final version, a few months ago. But at least for this Act 1 or Chapter 1, people played between 15 to 25 hours just in this, first chapter to finish the game and defeat Lilith as the main boss, at least for this part of the game. But because developers won't stop producing content, of course, they want to make more profit. we can expect this game to eventually, in years to come, to probably come up to maybe a couple of hundred of hours. Who knows? Maybe they have just began, so I can expect you know more stuff to come. So we don't have that much time. I would love to analyze different levels, especially when they go in dungeons or different sorts of climate, weather. Maybe go in the desert or the forest where it's more, you can enjoy more the realism of graphic design. You can see waterfalls and forests and all these things. So yeah, we don't have time for that, but I think that at least for now we have seen at least the gist of how the game looks like, how the character develops. He's like level 10. So in the last hour and so where we're talking, because we've been watching, times 1.5, the character develop a lot. He got some cool items. Of course, we can see, a lot of enemies. And I wanted to us to come at least to the point where he's dealing with the first main boss, but there's not enough time for that because we can watch for hours and hours and it may not be enough. So if you guys are okay with that, maybe we can just watch the final part of the game from the other guy and his video channel when he's just dealing with Lilith, so we can see how the final battle looks like, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, okay. I shared the link in the private chat there if you want to try to pull it up.
Yeah, I think I got a window here. If we want to switch over. If I do this.
Yeah, if you get the video, you can fast forward to 12:27. So 12 hours, 27 minutes.
12-hour video, man. Amazing. That's a full playthrough.
That's a full, but look, he was fast. Like I said, I found video of someone playing for 25 hours. I'm like, imagine watching 25-hour video and commenting, even with 2 speed. Like, that will kill you. That's like the whole trilogy of Lord of the Rings movies.
Seriously, all at one time.
Okay, cool. So I just want to give, please, just before you click play, I just want to give some background before we start. So this is the main character, defeating all the bosses, all the levels, all the creatures so far. So he's now about to face the big boss, at least of the chapter 1 or act 1 of the game, Lilith. And one more thing. I was always wondering how come in fantasy role-play games and in RPG games, why is there always a boss or like a deity? There's like so strong, so powerful, so insanely strong and hard to kill in every fantasy role-play game. It's kind of annoying and boring. At least I used to think. Then I was discovering biblical theology from Dr. Heiser and the Divine Council and learning territorial beings. And then I finally clicked. I'm like, these games made even by, some of them are probably people of God, but most of them are not. They're making these video games being more biblically accurate than some supposedly Christian books by supposedly Christian authors. Because at the end of all these levels, you're facing territorial being. You're facing what Paul was calling thrones, dominions, powers, principalities. I'm like, wow, this makes so much sense from biblical perspective. And then you're facing the big boss, the devil. But in the game, it's Lilith. So this shook me so much once when I discovered Dr. Heiser and his teaching on the Divine Council. Paul, if you're good with it, you can click play. You don't have to put 1.5 speed because it's only 10-minute video at the end. So you can play with normal speed. Or maybe turn on the sound, please.
Oh, it might be it might be the share the audio on your browser next to the browser address on the tab there. There might be a selection for share your audio.
Yeah, sorry, that's super loud for me, but you guys aren't getting audio off it?
No, it's not playing the audio from your tab to the actual stream. So on your when you click present to share your screen, it gives you a selection to add the audio from your tab or window.
Okay, so let me try to restart that one more time just so we get the audio, and then go from there. Hang on a second. If I do this. So if I do this one more time, do that. So that should come up here. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think I'm running the same thing. It's not actually giving me the audio.
I mean, if you can find, it's okay. I mean, the
Yeah,
most important thing is that we can see,
yeah, we can
um,
talk through. We can talk
yeah,
through it a
what's
little bit
happening,
here.
because all we will hear is how they're, fighting and throwing either
Yeah.
spells or clashing swords with each other. So it's fine. But basically, this is our hero, the barbarian, fighting Lilith, and it says creator of sanctuary, which, even though we said the Bible agrees a lot with the biblical worldview, this is one of the things that is not true. So Lilith
Mm.
did not create sanctuary or the world, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how she's calling forth or making these other beings here that you got to fight, and they're embodiments of hate, or something along that line.
Yeah, you can see little twisters. You can see how demonic principalities can manipulate weather, and I would also say that's not biblical. I would say there is a spiritual truth to that, um, but God is just like Baal. He can be the Lord of the storm, but Jesus is the Lord of the storm, right? So Jesus is the big boss.
All right, you guys, I hate to do it, but I got to hop off of here and take care of some stuff around my house. But this has been really fun. I hope you guys have a fun time. And thanks, Nico, for having me back on the channel, bro.
Hey, thank you for your time. I'll see you next time when we're covering something else. God bless and have a peaceful Sunday.
Right on, bud. Talk to you guys later.
Okay, Paul, I was thinking, I don't know what's your next essay or research paper for one of your theology classes, but like, hey man, try to find go on academia edu, or I don't know, try to find some books or scholarly articles about how to use video games as a source of creating sermon and finding all these illustration points, because they teach us, and I believe you know this, like, hey, when you're creating a sermon, come with illustrations, so the audience can correlate with you. Start with that, get their attention by illustration. I'm like, I mean, yeah, I don't think any pastor or preacher or priest would play a video like this in their congregation, right? It may not be appropriate, but you can still, I believe at least, you can still use and tell story to your congregation about how you experienced something and how it led you to appreciate God more, His word, or how to see things better. So, yeah, since you're back to school doing your master's, this can be a fun topic to research, how video games can help us to understand biblical theology better.
Yeah, my last class actually is hermeneutics, so interpretation, that sort of thing. So I don't know if I can work in video games necessarily there, but worldview, framing, storytelling, those all play a part for sure. Yeah, and it's just watching the video and reacting here. So our hero is kind of taking Lilith down to a certain point, but now she's transformed. She has a different aspect, and she's becoming sort of less human here as it goes as well.
Oh yeah, I don't want to spoil it. I saw what happens later. the video will finish soon when the character defeats Lilith. But yeah, we can see the transformation. And while it's not a perfect illustration, I'm reminded of how Paul says that even, the devil takes the form of light. So in this context, Lilith will not become an angel of light, but we see this shape-shifting ability and skill how to do this. And I would say that our real enemy, the demonic entities, they're very good and skilled how to camouflage themselves, because they had thousands of years how to adjust to the world, and they know how to trick us. And when we're beginning to do this video analysis, if you remember when Lilith first showed in that church, everyone turned against the pastor or the bishop or the priest of that church, because they were all listening to that voice. They were all deceived. They were all scanned by this angel of light. Only the pastor stood, and he was trying to tell them that they're deceived, and they actually turned against him and killed him. I'm also reminded of when Jesus said to his contemporaries how back in the past, so meaning in the Old Testament, God would send prophets to warn his people, to speak to his people, about God's word, and they would actually turn against those prophets and stone them and kill them, even though they're innocent. So I don't know, man. I'm blown away. I can actually do this for fun for hours. And, I'm not saying I would comment on Diablo or any game for like 10 hours, but I can do even more because it's so much fun and it's so much more realistic than just, oh, there's an image, there's a guy, there's good and evil, kill him, end the game, delete the game or uninstall, done. This is actually, this is so much real to me.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I was looking at the verse earlier where Paul writes, be, focus on the good things and be ignorant of evil. And I think part of that is because there's so much uncertainty about the dark forces and our enemy. As I've come to say, trying to figure that stuff out is like a bunch of smoke and mirrors, because there is some truth, but there's also a lot of manipulation, and they don't tell us everything. They tell us enough to try to get our attention. And they know the truth. James says, even the devils proclaim, the Lord. They know it's there, but they're also condemned. They know their fate, and it's not a good one. So we got to be careful what we're looking at. Yeah, we did the Babylonian stuff previously, and maybe we'll get to the Canaanite stuff. That interests me because that's a pretty new field of research. A lot of our information on Canaanite religion and how it relates to the Bible is, barely 100 years old, maybe just a touch more than that. And so maybe we'll get to a venture down there, down the future. Oh.
Yeah, while we were talking, one of the things Lilith, the demon, said to the guy, I gave you free will. And I'm thinking to myself, no, you did not. Are you having God complex just like as Satan does? Like, you think you created, you think you did. Like, what can you do except create chaos,
Well, even in that fight, you see her own kind of world and sanctuary falling apart as she unleashes her power, right? So this isn't any kind of stable thing that's going on.
Yeah, and like I said, this game, at least this first part of the game, even though played between 15 to 25 hours, depending on which gamer I found online, this is, man, can you imagine all this fight, all this? You think, oh man, I'm done. I got the best weaponry, I got the best armor, I defeated everyone, I did the side quest, I defeated Lilith. But then, like, the developers, oh no, we're coming with a sequel. We're coming with more download content. Of course, you'll have to pay for that, but it's not the end. It's just actually the beginning. So I have no clue who will be the new enemy or the new enemies coming, in the next, including in this year, but in the years to come when it comes to this game. But if I would have time and a better computer, because my computer is pretty old, I wouldn't mind playing this if I would have time. This is one of the games that seem very attractive to. I mean, I saw how it ends, but it wouldn't spoil, me gaming and progressing, advancing through, everything. And I don't know. The game so far, looks cool. Some people criticize and said it's not as good as Diablo 1 and 2. And I get it. That's like with movies. Always, usually, the first part of any movie or game is usually the best one. Every sequel is an extremely hard and difficult task to be as good as the original, but it's never as good as. But to me, so far, Diablo 4 looks just fine.
Well, I mean, you get the nostalgia thing, right? I think that's why people are saying that, the remake of, I think it's Diablo 2 with a new engine, and it's so much better than that. It's probably comparable because they've been pretty consistent from what I can see, but there's these memories attached, right? And you can't put a value around that, and they do it. I think with the story here, they kind of hint at what the expansion is going to be. I was doing some reading and how they're tying it in, so I don't know if we should spoil too much, although the whole game's posted online now.
Oh no, please, please.
That's
No,
fine.
if you do know details about the sequel, please tell us who'll be the enemy, the arch enemy,
Right,
and give us some details. Yeah.
right. So what I understand is, and this actually has a biblical principle attached to it as well. So it looks like what they're going to do is bring back one of the old enemies that isn't kind of dead and gone, that was attached to Lilith. And maybe I won't say too much more than that. That's enough in itself. But I think that's important because, like we've said, is that there's a ton of Judeo-Christian imagery that they've used in this, but without having a proper creator and savior, evil is not really ever defeated. It sort of lingers around. And I suppose for the standpoint of storytelling in a game, that's convenient, but you also don't get a proper order or finality or victory without the victory of Christ. That underpins everything in our world, even a game. So without that, they can kind of bring back whoever they want because there's always a loophole. I mean, we see this in like superhero comics and that kind of thing too, right? Like Batman and Superman are never really dead, or you can go further through that. But that seems to be what they're going to do in the game and kind of bring somebody else back and create a story around it and tie it in. But
Yeah, I actually saw just now that it says this is chapter 6. So I guess there's more than chapter 1 in, from beginning to the end. Maybe we can call this act 1 and then many chapters. It's almost like a book. You read, every chapter is different mission. So I guess the download content that will come, maybe just a new I don't know, new act, and all these are just chapters. So maybe there'll be act 2, chapter 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, doesn't matter. But I mean, look at the impressive size of this army, and they're against him, dang it. So look at this massive knight. Oh, he got killed instantly. I was just about to say, man,
yeah,
this
that was
is
a
a
little
delight. It will be an
anticlimactic.
amazing and long fight, and he just let him like he's like a toothpick. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Look how the shields look like. Look the details, that golden red. Look how the armor is shining. Look, I mean, everything is like I said, I wish we had a little bit more time to analyze some levels like this one in the desert or in the forest, seeing some water. Because usually in all of these games, every level has different background, different theme.
Yeah.
But that's okay because this is just our beginning. Again, even though we didn't have any live chat, you guys, the audience, are more than welcome to leave in the YouTube comments or Facebook comments which game would you like us to analyze in the future. I would love for sure to do The Witcher 3. That's like for sure. I would say 99%. But if you guys have any desire and if a game is good and popular and we can draw against so many spiritual lessons, why not? I mean, I'm coming from the era of when I played Gothic 1, 2, and 3, which were like back in the days, again, a couple of decades ago, they were like mega hits, at least in Europe. And, like those games form me as a gamer. And I don't mind even analyzing some of the older games if they are good like that. Or I remember playing Fable. I remember playing so many of these games. I forgot the titles, but like these, then I learned how much I actually love these games. And back then, when I was younger, I didn't even see so many spiritual um, comparisons with what I see now. Because I was younger, I would just want to have some fun, give me some adrenaline. Oh, I finished this level, let me go to sleep. Bam. But now I see these things through different perspective, different eyes, and I don't know. I just tend to appreciate these things more from not just visual aspect, but also from religious aspect. And I don't know. I don't know if you're gaming, Paul, or if you used to game more than just strategy games, which you mentioned.
Yeah,
But
I've been a casual gamer. I mean, actually, Fable's a good example, and something I was thinking of is that most games reward you for kind of taking the ethical route. I think about
mm,
Fable, where if you kind of pick the good side and pick the good side of conversations and help people and level up your skills that way, you got some pretty good rewards. You could totally like betray people and backstab people and that sort of thing, but your character would change, and actually some of your options would get cut off later in the game. So it's just funny that a game like that tries to be open and sandboxy and let you make choices still has these restrictions, and there's a way that we respond to it, and that we have to deal with that, and there's consequences to our actions, even in a fantasy world. So just principles like that show up in these games, and then you look at the, it's telling a story, you're helping shape a story, but it all correlates to the greatest story of the creator God that created us and loved us and made a world, and then even through our church choices decided to come back and redeem us, and the victory and the reconciliation that's going to come at the end, right? Just that these structures and things we run into that sort of seem inevitable, and I think it's because of the reality of what's happened in our world, and which people try to escape that and don't want to deal with it. But if you look at what's going on, like you just can't escape it. Yeah, it's interesting how different stories. I'd be curious to see people chime in and at least get Nico's juices going on different games and how they relate, and maybe some of the stuff we've talked about and some of the themes from the channel. Maybe after having Dr. Ross, we gotta look at some UFO or outer space games here, right, buddy?
hey, yeah, I'm open to it. But I just want to say I have some embarrassing moment of confession when it comes to these RPG games. Well, not so much these games that you can see from the bird's view. You don't have so much freedom in your dialogues, and uh, it's very limit your character development and dialogue. It's very limited. I'm not saying necessarily it's linear, but it's not so much. You don't have so much freedom as you would have in Fable or Gothic or The Witcher, where you have so much, dialogues are wealthier and bigger choice based on how you behave and do you help people or not. People love you or not love you, accept you. But I want to say something embarrassing in all of these games where pickpocketing was allowed, because like sometimes, I mean, honestly, sometimes you're desperate, like you need money, you need to get some looting, you need some better weapons. I'm like, if they won't discount me, I'll just go looting. You sneak up in house, or in some games you have the option actually to pickpocket people while you talk with them, and you're like hoping they won't notice. If they notice you, your reputation goes down, and that can mess you up until your reputation goes up. So again, I don't know if this is embarrassing or not, but I'm like, hey, the brother has to do what he has to do to survive and to you know finish the task in games. But like, um you know I'm just saying that these games, um, besides being a hobby, besides, is this like the end scene?
I think it's getting close, and I noticed
No.
if you pick
Okay.
up that wolf that kind of shows up in the beginning is back here at the end, so that's a thread that they kind of run through the whole
Hmm.
thing too. Obviously, we didn't see enough, but I wonder if that shows up through the rest of the game. There's something else going on with this character. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting
and you know what? When I was
just 2
looking at the
minutes.
classes, I wasn't so much interested in like, being a wizard or a mage. But if you choose to be a druid, I saw someone playing as a druid. You can actually transform yourself into like a wolf man or a wolf or like a werewolf, something like that, and you're so powerful. And I'm like, man, this looks amazing. But I just wanted to finish on my previous thought. Like, I see it in these games, I'm not going to play them just so I can learn religious things. So besides the learning aspect and besides the, you know, the enjoying part as a hobby and, just having fun, I see so many things from real life, like how do you trade? How do you, engage with people? Or like if I have this ethical part, will I pickpocket people in the game or not? And I would choose if I can get with it, get out with it, and get some, um, you know, um, I can be advancing. I would use it, but you can learn so many things even on psychological level when it comes to these games. Like, oh, okay, I can see correlation with the real life. How I would advance, how I would change. Would it go this path, this route, or not? And then you can tell, oh, okay, like, well, I can do this in the video game only, but not like in real life. So like I see these games almost like a mentor, almost like a teacher to especially young kids whose brain is still developing. They have to make moral choices in these games all the time.
So I think that's the end of the video. Yeah, I'm gonna stop this here for a sec.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I actually, this is a good question. Maybe we should put up to your storytelling friends, and if they come back for more of a storytelling episode, thinking about games and some of the stuff like this, I think storytelling and that creation aspect is a very human thing, right? I've been pondering, and I know there's lots of commentary that started out there, but what is something like AI going to do with storytelling? Will AI be able to put together stories and themes in new ways that humanity can't do, or will it always kind of just be a very good copycat based on what we've done? And to be, I'm a little bit weary yet, just because I haven't seen the really good stuff, I guess. But also the concept behind it, letting AI kind of take over all of our creative generation, which to me doesn't make sense, especially from a Christian standpoint, because humanity, is made in the image of the Creator. We are the primary form of that, or the impetus in this world. A lot of, I think Genesis 1, things yield according to their kind, and there is a creation and generation in that sense, but humanity has this ingenuity that other things in this world just don't have. And my gut instinct is that AI will never really replace that. I don't think it can, right? But if we want it to, and if we give it that power, it's not that it will actually become more powerful. I don't think. I think it's that we will lose our power because we stop using it. Yeah, that's kind of out of right field maybe, but when it comes to games and stories and that sort of thing, there's some other people that do more writing than I do, and maybe they've got some opinions, and we can do something with that. But books or painting or a video game can all be outlets for a type of storytelling and creation that shares the truth about our world. That's kind of what you were talking about. But what happens if we let something else take over that process? Do we lose the story? Or maybe not lose the story, but do we lose the quality of the story? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I just know that artificial intelligence, just like anything else in life, it can be money, sex, fire, um, hobbies, whatever. Religion, it can be used in good and bad purposes. Science, right? I mean, we had World War II, Nazi scientists using science, for evil purposes. So we have philosophy. We have everything in life, food, sweets. Like we can use so many things for good and bad. Um, I don't know where the artificial intelligence can lead to. I see so many potential for good. I see so many potential for evil. If it will replace millions of jobs in the future, I don't see it as a good thing. If I just need to click a button and there'll be a story invented for me, movie made for me, graphics done for me, I see how everything is served on a plate just for me. But also I see that as almost sort of have you seen the sci-fi comedy that came out 10, 15 years ago, Idiocity? Or no, Idiocracy. I don't know, have you seen it? But
I think
basically,
I've heard of it, but I didn't see it. Yeah.
yeah, basically, I would hate to be living in reality where you just press a button and everything is served and you're just, there's no purpose in your life. You're not just physically, but mentally, spiritual, emotionally, you're lazy. I don't want to say worthless, but you're living on 1% of your capacities. I would also hate to see, because I just finished, I just graduated from Moody College, you're still in school. I can see how if you're super busy working, studying, you need some help, you may be very close to that decision. Let me click this button on the chat, GPT, however that is pronounced. It can help me with sources or maybe at least finish a paragraph. I cannot condemn students who want to do that, but still I'm afraid, I'm concerned if theology students in the future would merely rely on artificial intelligence to write sermons, to write theology books, to write research papers, because if they do it over and over again, they will never develop the necessary skills, they will never have good critical thinking, they will never learn how to use good and versus bad sources. They will never know simple stuff, how to do the MLA, how to do the Chicago style or whatever you're using, APA. If I as a foreigner had to learn by living in the States, you should learn too. And I see so many benefits of people learning these things naturally, normally, even though it's tough, it can be annoying, it can be, spending a lot of time and energy versus, oh, let me just click, sip my coffee or drink whatever, and let me the computer do my homework. And tomorrow I print it, or well, now no one prints. You just submit, to your professor, and done. I mean, anyone can do it. I can bring my 11-year-old niece, and she can do it. Then why do you go to theology school? So again, I'm far from perfect, so that's why I cannot judge others. I also found ways to be flexible, with some of my homeworks. But I hope new theology students, new generations rising and going to theology schools will not be merely relying on this, but developing their intellect as a powerful gift and tool from God to write papers, to write sermons, to write books, articles, but also create music, movies, video games that will be godly and that will have so much religious themes and details which can use to draw people who are not walking with God so that others can see and say, hey, I also like, whatever. I also like Lord of the Rings. I also like The Hobbit. I also like Narnia. Wow, are you telling me that I can use all these visual aspects and um, imaginary worlds and beings and somehow connect that with the Bible and see the big picture and have both God or religion and this aspect in my life, and I can still be a gamer, I can still enjoy art, and like, yes, the answer is yes. So yeah, I can see artificial intelligence going both ways. I just hope that book authors will still be book authors, that preachers will be still preachers, that philosophers will be still philosophers, and not a work of artificial intelligence behind all these people. Do you have, Paul, any closing thoughts? Because we just hit exactly 2 hours. I think that's a good amount of time that even though I just want to say this, for the end, I feel bad that from 15 hours we dissected maybe hour and a half only, and that's only from the beginning. After that, there's so many. The game has fewer several dozens of mini bosses in every world. So much better weapons, so much better armor. So I'm a little bit sad we couldn't cover more. but it is what it is. This is our first video. I cannot be too demanding or too self-critical.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my only. That's my regret, if I can put it that way. But I just want to hear your closing thoughts, Paul.
No, this is kind of cool. I have a couple thoughts. Maybe that will wrap us up, and you can respond and think about it. I think sometimes the nature of our culture, Western culture in general, too, is that we get focused on achievement, right? And we just want to get things done. We got work to do. We got to make progress. We got to be productive, and it's this output-driven sort of thing, right? Um, I've sort of come around to a point going through. I mean, but, I'll back up. Completing a video game with a good story, and like we've just gone through Bible college, seminary, and that there's a lot of process that's very similar in those things, right? Um, you could talk about the ethics, but I'll skip that point just for the sake of an example, right? You could pay to get someone to complete a video game for you or get an account transfer or something. And you could pay or use other tools to write all your course materials, study through it, get it, and you get your mark and you get to the end of it and you get the piece of paper and that's all said and done, right? But what do you lose out in doing that? And I think that's kind of where my mind was going with AI and what's happening and just maybe where part of our culture is right now is that we want the output but we don't want to put in the work. But there's a high value to going through the process, going through the struggle, going through the growth, whether that's going through a video game and maybe you lose a level like 3 times, you die and you got to restart, but you learn a skill and you level up your character or whatever it is, going to school and education. And we've got this value about education that we should go, but are we going just for the ends or as a mean to an end in getting a career thing? Or are we actually letting it change us? Are we actually growing and learning? And in the case of seminary, or it can be every day. I'm at a point now where I'm trying to slow down a bit and realize how God is speaking to all of us through nature, through other people that we approach, and letting that change me, you know. So like, don't skip the story. I can get your frustration, Nico, that we only capture a piece of this thing and go through and pulling out themes, but that's a practical reality in this format that we're doing. But in life, like probably one of the reasons I'm looking forward to being done school, it's been good, but it also takes up time as a resource. And can I use that time to connect with people, to think and work on other things, to do more of these videos, whatever it is. And I've already been thinking about that as the last few months as I'm coming towards the end of one part of the journey, but then also looking forward and what is the next part of the journey and what does that mean for me and how can I grow through it as well, right? And obviously you've been on your own journey. I know we've shared a little bit, but the growth of this channel, you're getting some pretty incredible guests the last few weeks, and it's somewhat unexpected to a point, right? But watching that grow and letting it lead you and change as well. I guess with this, if you're into games and if you're gonna look at this stuff, like, don't skip the story, do the work to get to the end the proper way.
Okay, man. I'm again thankful for your time and for Josh's time. I know Joshua had to leave because of some emergency. I'm honestly looking forward to videos like this because okay, I'll be very selfish but very honest. I work full-time job, side job. I do this. I have youth ministry. I'm tired and I'm busy. So videos like this help a lot, not just so my nerd level can go to the max, but I can also relax and enjoy and prepare less compared to like last Sunday when I had Dr. Ross or anyone. I have to prepare, I have to read, I have to research, I have to write down. But also these things, even down on a, let's say on an amateur level, like we're trying to do, right? We never did stuff like that, but we're learning as we're going, and it's still good, it's still decent. But also, I would like to continue doing this for everyone who has been told that they're immature because they're gaming or because there's no point. It's just it's like one of those when you want to belittle someone. Oh, it's just a video game, or it's just this. It's it's like it's not just a game. So I would encourage you if you have free time, you like gaming, I would say continue gaming as much as you understand by the Holy Spirit that you're not playing 10 hours a day, not sleeping enough, not going to church, not working, not abandoning your homework, right? So be faithful as a steward of things God has put in your life, but don't feel condemned or bad gaming. And as you play, try to immerse yourself in that life. Try to see how you will be acting as that main character. Try to learn so many biblical messages and perspectives. Try to learn about all these entities, creatures, demons, and gods in video games, because they are more real than you think. You corrected me when you said what Mark Twain said, that and again I forgot the quote, but
truth is stranger than fiction, and we've been on that journey. I said before that like the divine council worldview, like 14-year-old me is really excited about that because the world actually makes sense now, but yeah man.
Yeah, so I just want to say, like, if you're a gamer and Christian, don't feel condemned, don't feel bad. You're not called to imitate your priest who may find that as ridiculous. You're not made in the image of your mother and father, even though through them God brought you, but still you're made in the image and likeness of your heavenly Father. So if you're different than someone else, that's fine, as long as you're not sinning. So that's the second thing. First thing is more selfish. I want to relax and less prepare and have more fun in making videos like this, where we're just going like commenting on what we're seeing. But also I want to continue reaching out to all sorts of nerds. For me, being as a nerd, and I can relate to them. And I heard in my Christian walk, people belittling games, but then enjoying all sorts of sports or hobbies. Like, I cannot say these things are godly. Are they building you up? They may be good for your body, but they're not necessarily building your character or spirit. So then why are you belittling and judging those who play games just because you're not? Like, my dad is a fisherman. We know that some of the apostles were fishermen, and there's nothing sinful that. But if you're like my dad, when he was younger, he was obsessed fishing every day, all day. I mean, I can still go and judge that. So we can exaggerate and idolize with any sort of hobby. So let's not condemn and judge others. So these are two things on my heart. I would love to continue making videos like this. I would like to have you and Joshua back whenever you guys have time. Hopefully we'll have Joshua and Zechariah, maybe Chase, as people who love fantasy, who love gaming, but then again, based on their schedule and time. I just want to say that, I thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy, and maybe because you told me Fridays may work better for you, maybe we can start doing this, gaming things. I don't know, some other days.
Well, I look forward to these, and I really appreciate the what you've been sharing and the community that you've built, and getting to know some of these people. And I look forward to a new season coming here in the fall, and we'll see what we can get up to, man.
Something started happening with my laptop, started lagging. I started hearing noises from the laptop, maybe because my battery is full and I have to unplug it, or because it's overheating. But yeah, I want to say thank you everyone who stayed with us. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Joshua, who will see this later when he's back, done whatever he has to finish. Yeah, I'll see you guys next Sunday. We have another special guest and another very interesting topic, so I hope you'll join us. Thank you. God bless.